The house on Blackwood Hill. Some houses don't just remember the dead, they keep them. And once you step inside, you'll never truly leave. Tonight, I'll tell you the story of the Blackwood Hill House, a place so cursed even the bravest investigators refuse to return. Because what lives there doesn't just haunt, it hunts. You've heard whispers of haunted houses before, but tonight we go further. Over the next hour, you and I will walk step by step into the Blackwood Hill House, and I'll guide you through 5 acts of terror, each one darker than the last. What you'll hear tonight isn't just a story. It's a descent, a slow unraveling of sanity, a warning carved in whispers and blood. Act 1. The Arrival. We begin at the gates of Blackwood Hill, where the silence feels too heavy, where the trees themselves seem to recoil from what waits inside. I'll take you through the first creaks of the rotting floorboards, the lingering stench of something long dead, and the unsettling feeling that the moment you step inside, the house is already awake. You'll learn what the locals say about the Blackwood family, and why the town never speaks their name after midnight. Act 2. The first encounters, from whispers caught on tape to shadows in the windows, will explore the first signs of something unnatural. You'll hear the story of Amelia Blackwood, the daughter who wrote of voices scratching at her walls, her diary the only clue left behind. And when her ghost finally makes herself known, you'll realize the house doesn't just want to frighten, it wants to feed. Act 3. The Descent. At midnight, everything changes. The walls stretch, the house bends, and the line between reality and nightmare is shattered. You'll follow footsteps down endless corridors, hear the muffled screams of those already taken, and discover the terrible secret carved into the stones beneath. This was never just a family home. It was a cage, and what it contains has been hungry for decades. Act 4. The Trap. By now, escape is impossible. Doors lead to nowhere, windows open onto landscapes that don't belong to this world. And the mirrors don't show your reflection anymore. They show the ones who came before you, the ones who didn't make it out. One by one, the house claims its victims, not with chains, but with walls that swallow the living whole. Act 5. The ending, and then comes the truth. In the basement lies the thing that began it all. Something bound in symbols and chains, something that does not haunt, but hunts. It chooses who will stay and who will be consumed. You'll hear the last desperate words of the narrator, the static of his recorder cutting out as he realizes what has been behind him all along. The story doesn't end with survival, it ends with silence, and silence is sometimes worse than death. And so stay with me, don't look away, because for the next hour, you'll walk through every step of this nightmare, and if you listen closely enough, you might hear the Blackwood house whispering your name too. Act 1. The Arrival. The road was almost forgotten, an old cracked lane swallowed by weeds leading into the woods like a path that wished to be erased. My headlights cut through the mist, but the deeper I drove, the less the light seemed to matter. The trees leaned in unnaturally close, their branches clawing at the roof of the car like skeletal fingers. The GPS had long since failed, no signal, just me and the directions I'd been given by a trembling old man at the gas station miles back. He had stared at me too long, as if weighing whether or not to even speak of it. Finally, he muttered, "Blackwood Hill House isn't abandoned, it's waiting. If you go there, don't stay past midnight, that's when it wakes." His words replayed in my head with each mile. Make your first glimpse of the house. When the trees finally thinned, there it was, sitting atop the hill like a dark crown. The Blackwood House. From a distance, it looked massive, almost too large for the hill itself. Its roof sagged, tiles missing like teeth knocked out of a skull. The windows, tall and narrow, stared out with a hollow blackness reflecting no light, no life. The porch was warped, boards twisted as though the house had tried to tear itself apart. But what froze me wasn't the sight, it was the feeling. The air grew heavier as I got closer, pressing down on me, making every breath labored. It felt like the house knew I was coming, and had been waiting for years. The local legends. I parked at the edge of the overgrown driveway. The silence around me was unnatural. No birds, no crickets, not even the whisper of wind through leaves. Locals said the house had been abandoned since 1978. That year, the Blackwood family, mother, father, and their only daughter, Amelia, vanished without explanation. Their front door left wide open, dinner still on the table, candles melted down to pools of wax. Police searched for weeks, no bodies, no answers. Afterward, anyone who tried to live there never stayed long. One family left after just 3 nights. The father clawing at his own eyes, screaming about faces in the walls. A group of teenagers who broke in on a dare were found wandering miles away, barefoot, unable to speak, their tongues bruised black. The house gained a reputation, and then it was left alone, forgotten, except by the whispers. Stepping inside. With my flashlight in hand, I pushed open the front door. It resisted. The wood groaned, swollen with damp, but then gave way with a sharp crack that echoed too loudly through the empty halls. The air inside was worse, damp earth, mildew, and something else, something metallic, faint but undeniable. The smell of blood. The floor creaked under my weight, and the sound seemed to travel further than it should, bouncing back in whispers. The foyer stretched upward into darkness. The chandelier that once hung there lay shattered on the floor, glass like scattered ice. A staircase curled to the second floor, its railing warped and broken in places like something had come crashing down long ago. My flashlight beam swept across peeling wallpaper, old portraits hanging crooked on the walls. The faces in the painting seemed wrong, eyes painted too dark, mouths tilted just slightly into expressions that felt almost mocking. The first signs. Then came the first sound. At first it was faint, a shuffle somewhere upstairs, like bare feet moving slowly across wood. I froze, breath caught in my throat, every nerve screaming to leave. But the silence returned just as quickly. I told myself it was the house settling. Old wood, nothing more. But when I turned back toward the door, the heavy oak door I had left cracked open was now completely shut. I didn't remember closing it, and I stood there listening. The silence was no longer empty. It was thick, like someone else was breathing with me in rhythm just out of sight. Somewhere faintly I swore I heard it, a whisper, not words, just the sound of someone exhaling into my ear. And in that moment I realized the gas station clerk hadn't been warning me about midnight. He had been warning me about the moment I stepped inside, because the house was already awake. Act 2. The first encounters. I placed my bag of equipment on the dusty floor. Digital recorder, thermal camera, EMF reader. The red light of the recorder blinked in the dark, the only living pulse in the room. As I settled in, the silence began to fracture. At first it was the faint click of the recorder, then underneath a second sound. A soft whisper, so faint I thought it was feedback. I leaned in, rewound the tape, played it back. "Get out!" 2 words dragged low like breath forced through teeth. I froze. The recorder had captured a voice that hadn't been there when I pressed the button. I swallowed hard and tried again, this time speaking aloud. "If anyone's here with me, make yourself known." The playback answered, not with my words, but with another whisper, a child's voice this time. "It's not done with it." My chest tightened. From the child in the window. Exploring the ground floor, I made my way through the dining room. The table was still set, plates rusted with old food, chairs tucked in as though the Blackwoods might return any second. The smell of rot lingered strongest here, sharp and unrelenting. That's when I saw it, reflected in the glass of the cracked china cabinet. Upstairs, the attic window, a silhouette, small, thin, standing perfectly still. I jerked my flashlight upward, but the beam caught only grime-streaked glass, no child. And yet the reflection had been clear. I bolted up the staircase, the boards groaning beneath me. At the attic door, I froze. The padlock was still latched tight, rusted shut. Nobody had been up there in decades. But I had seen her. On the diary in one of the bedrooms, I found it. A small journal tucked beneath a pile of yellowed sheets. Its cover cracked with age, but inside, the writing was fresh enough to still bleed through the paper. It belonged to Amelia Blackwood. The entries began normally. Notes about school, her favorite songs, the loneliness of living so far from town. Then they grew darker. She wrote about the scratching at night. How it started beneath her bed, then inside the walls. How she heard voices calling her name, promising they'd take her where it's safe. Her handwriting changed as the days went on. Letters jagged, smeared. The final entry ended mid-sentence. "It's in the room with me now." The last word trailed off into a line of ink, as though the pen had been ripped from her hand. A small smear of dried brown stained the page. Blood. Albert, the first attack. I set the diary down with shaking hands. That's when it happened. The lights, though I hadn't turned any on, flickered. Not the warm glow of electricity, but a cold blue-white flash that lit the room like lightning. The temperature plummeted. My breath fogged in the air. Then my hair yanked violently backward, hard enough to slam my head against the wall. I stumbled, flashlight clattering across the floor. And in the spinning beam, I saw it. A figure in the corner. Small, pale, head tilted too far to one side as though her neck had snapped. Eyes wide, hollow, watching me. Amelia. She lifted her hand, pointed toward the floorboards beneath me, and whispered with lips that did not move. "He's still hungry." And then she was gone. Act 3. The descent. The house grew restless. Midnight struck, and with it came a shift, subtle at first, then undeniable. The walls groaned, not like wood expanding, but like lungs drawing breath. The house was alive. The endless hallway. I heard it, a scream. High, sharp, desperate from upstairs. I ran, heart pounding, but as I turned the corner, the hallway stretched impossibly long. Longer than it had any right to be. Doors lined either side, more than I remembered. And at the far end, a shadow ran past. I chased it, only to find the hallway looped back into itself. No matter how far I ran, I always returned to the same landing. The house was shifting around me. By the missing investigator. From the shadows came another sound, thumping. A dull, rhythmic pound from inside the walls. I pressed my ear to the cracked plaster and froze. It wasn't random, it was fists. Beating. A muffled voice cried out. A man's voice. Begging, "Help me. Let me out," then silence. The wall pulsed beneath my palm like flesh, and then it exhaled. The basement's secret. Driven by terror and instinct, I descended into the basement. The air was thick, almost wet, stinking of rot. My flashlight beam swept across old crates and rusted tools until it landed on the far wall. Symbols were carved into the stone. Circles, lines, marks too old and complex to be graffiti. Some glistened as if freshly cut. And in the center, a chain not attached to anything, hanging loose but swaying, as though something had just pulled against it. That's when I realized Amelia's family hadn't been victims. They had been worshippers, occultists who summoned something here. Something bound to this house. Every life since then had been a sacrifice. Act 4, the trap. I ran for the door. It wouldn't budge. I pulled, kicked, slammed with my shoulder, but the wood felt like stone. And through the glass panels, the world outside wasn't right. The trees bent at impossible angles. The moon hung low, too close, dripping light like liquid. The house wasn't inside the world anymore. The world was inside the house. The mirror. In the parlor, an old mirror leaned against the wall. Its surface rippled faintly like water disturbed by a breath. I crept closer, unable to resist. At first, I saw only my reflection. Then behind me, shadows. Dozens of them, faces pressed against the glass. Their mouths opened wide in silent screams, hands clawing at the surface as though begging to be freed. Then one of the hands shot outward, breaking through, cold fingers wrapping around my wrist. I screamed, yanking back, the mirror shattering into black shards. But instead of falling, the shards hung in the air, each piece reflecting not me, but Amelia. Dozens of her, all whispering in unison, "He's coming," and the devouring walls. The house began to shake. The walls bulged, cracked, and from within, pale arms pushed outward. Dozens, maybe hundreds, screaming mouths opening in the plaster. One of the hands grabbed a man beside me, pulling him in. His scream echoed as his body disappeared into the wall, leaving behind only streaks of blood. The walls didn't just hold the dead. They fed on the living. Act 5. The ending. I stumbled into the basement again, the only place left. The air was heavy, vibrating with a low growl that didn't come from any throat. At the far end of the chamber, something crouched. Enormous. Its form was shrouded in darkness, but the outline was wrong. Too many limbs, joints bending backward, a head that rose and twisted like smoke. It spoke without words, the sound pressing into my skull. "You came willingly, that makes you mine." I fell to my knees, clutching my head as memories not my own surged, every victim, every soul it had taken. I was next. Amelia appeared one last time, standing before me, her hollow eyes filled with sorrow. "You should never have come, now you'll never leave." The entity's limbs unfurled, crawling toward me, stretching across the floor. Chains rattled, symbols glowed, and the basement filled with the sound of 1,000 voices screaming in unison. I tried to run, but the ground turned soft, sucking at my feet like quicksand. I screamed into the recorder, the only witness left. And as the darkness swallowed me whole, my voice broke into static. The last words caught on tape. It's behind me. Then silence, not empty silence. The kind that waits, and if you listen closely enough,